So what is logical data mapping, and what is its role in the ETL project team? Logical data map is used to describe the data definition of the source system, the model of the target data warehouse, and the operations and processing methods needed to convert the data of the source system into the data warehouse. Documentation, usually in the form of a table or Excel, to save the following information. So table, target table name, target column name, target table type, indicates whether it's a fact table, a dimension table, or a bracket definition table. The slowly changing dimension type. Type 0 is fixed, type 1 has no history, type 2 has row versioning, type 3 previous value column, and type 4 history table. I think this is a typo here, it should be type 5 probably, unless someone knows of a type 5 that should be between those two. Okay.
I think actually, I think that was right. I think it is a type 6, that hybrid.
So there is no type
1,
5?
2, and 3. There is a type 5, but it's let's see. Yeah, I don't remember the exact definition of the type 5.
Maybe it's just not used commonly?
Not really, no. I think once you get into the types beyond like 3 or 4, then they're kind of a little bit more nebulous.
Right.
Just to describe various hybrids in different configurations.
Okay. Mike, but can you please just Google SCD types? Maybe data warehouse SCD types. Oh yeah, okay.
Yeah, so you will see the different definitions on different sites, but yeah, I'd say
the same thing. 3,
0,
4, and then 6.
Yeah, 0 through 3.
That's interesting. It skips 5 too. Huh.
Yeah, 0 through 3 are pretty well defined, but beyond that, you'll get some differing opinions as to what defines the types beyond that.
Mini dimension. Some of the attributes of a large dimension are subject to change, but you don't want to do type 2 because the dimension has millions of rows. So it seems like it's going kind of into the weeds a little bit.
Right.
Yeah, I see.
Okay, so we can just leave it like this. Okay.
Right, okay. And so the source database name, the instance name, and the source database or connection string, source table name. So this is basically listing some technical stuff that you would gather as you're conducting your mapping operation. Logical data mapping should continue throughout the data migration project, which illustrates the ETL strategy in data migration. Logical data mapping prior to physical data mapping is important to the ETL project team, which acts as a metadata. It is best to choose a data migration tool that can generate logical data mappings. All right. And Tyler, do you by any chance have anything to add to this kind of analysis that they've presented here?
Not really, no. I think that's pretty good. Yeah, it's
pretty straightforward, kind of technical, right?
A source to target mapping document.
Yeah. Seems like they're just describing some technical aspects of it.
Right.
So explain the 3 basic delivery steps for consistent dimensions. So the key to data integration is to assure consistency of dimensions, and then combine the fact data for the different data sources through consistent dimensions for analysis. In general, ensuring consistency has the following 3 steps. Standardizing. The purpose of standardization is to make the data encoding methods and data formats of different data sources the same, laying the foundation for the next data matching. Matching and deduplication. There are 2 kinds of work for data matching. One is to match the different attributes of different data sources to the same thing, which is which is more perfect data. The other is to use different data sources. The same data is identified as duplicates, laying the groundwork for the next step of screening. Screening or surviving, the main purpose of data filtering is to select the final clean data as the master data. All right. Now, this question is categorized as being about Hadoop. What is Scoop? Apache Scoop is a tool. By the way, it is retired. I get to that later, but might as well know that right now. Apache Scoop is a tool designed to support bulk export and import of data into a Hadoop file system for structured data stores such as relational databases, enterprise data warehouses, and NoSQL systems. It is a data migration tool used upon a connector architecture which supports plugins to provide connectivity to new external systems. An external use case of Hadoop Scoop is an enterprise that runs a nightly Scoop import to load the day's data from a production transactional RDBMS into a Hive data warehouse for further analysis. And as of just a few months ago, Scoop was retired. So I guess it's being decommissioned. I do not recall the exact details of what they decided to do, but I'm guessing it was they probably just upgraded to something better or newer, maybe rebranded it into a newer version. Does anybody know anything about why Scoop is retired?
No, it says here that it was moved into a different project. Apache Attic.
Yeah,
right?
Apache Attic. So it's like, it's basically being decommissioned.
Yeah, Misha, also, when you're saying NoSQL, I think you should say NoSQL.
Okay, no SQL, okay.
Yeah.
I always wonder when to call it SQL and when to call it SQL.
No, it's one word, NoSQL. That's there's no dash, right?
Okay, so no SQL. Is that how they pronounce this?
Yeah.
I usually always called it SQL in the first place, but everybody pronounced it SQL. So I don't know.
No,
I think it becomes a tomato thing, but if this is what they generally say, no SQL, then that's what it is.
When people say Microsoft SQL Server, because like it's a old time jargon. SQL Server,
Right.
everybody knows what it is, but NoSQL is NoSQL.
I got you. Okay, that makes sense. Yeah. All right. So Hadoop, again, what is Hadoop? Hadoop is an open source project from Apache Software Foundation. It provides a software framework for distributing and running applications on clusters of servers that is inspired by Google's MapReduce programming model, as well as its file system, GFS. Hadoop was originally written for the Nutch search engine project, which I'm not really familiar with. Hadoop is open source framework written in Java. It efficiently processes large volumes of data on a cluster of commodity hardware. Hadoop can be set up on a single machine, but the real power of Hadoop comes from a cluster of machines. It can be scaled from a single machine to thousands of nodes. Hadoop consists of two key parts, the Hadoop distributed file system and MapReduce. And what is PiSpark? Apache Spark is written in Scala programming language. PiSpark has been released in order to support the collaboration of Apache Spark and Python. It actually is Python API for Spark. In addition, PiSpark helps you interface with resilient distributed data sets in Apache Spark from Python programming language. Advantages of using PiSpark are Python is very easy to learn and implement. It provides a simple and comprehensive API. With Python, the readability of code, maintenance, and familiarity is far better. It features various options for data visualizations, which are difficult using Scala or Java. I think it's a big advantage to have Python available with this because just there's so much greater access to Python as far as people using it than there is to people using Scala, you know?
Stop. First of all, it's not Scala, it's Scala.
Scala, yeah.
Sorry. And another thing, I actually have a question if somebody knows. PiSpark, we have PiSpark in Synapse in Azure Cloud, but is there a PiSpark which is not in Synapse? Is it like an Apache PiSpark? Or like, I simply don't know. Does anybody know?
Like just a standalone engine for running PiSpark?
Yeah.
Not that I'm aware of.
So you're saying that PiSpark is actually was developed by Microsoft? And
it wasn't. No, I mean, you can run PiSpark in a Databricks instance.
Yeah.
Okay. But what about, I don't know, Google Cloud or Amazon Cloud?
I would imagine so. Yeah, I'd imagine that they have. If they have services where you can spin up a Spark cluster, then yeah, I'd imagine they'd support PiSpark.
Okay.
Yeah, I think
Misha,
it says something about how Google is getting into stuff with PiSpark on something called Dataproc. I'm not very familiar with what the intricacy of that, but and so what is Databricks used for? Databricks is an industry-leading cloud-based data engineering tool used for processing and transforming massive quantities of data and exploring the data through machine learning models. Recently added to Azure, it is the latest big data tool on the Microsoft Cloud. We all know about that, I think. Data science. How do you go about architecting a data science or machine learning solution for any business problem? So I guess there's a 4-step process that's being described here. Set the objective. The objective represents the business outcome that needs to be achieved. Identify the levers. The levers represent the input to the system which can influence the business outcome. The inputs to the system can represent variables that can be controlled, levers that can be pulled, and the variables which can't be controlled. Collect the data. Next step is to determine what data you have and what you would need to collect. And finally, design one or more models and combine them as the solution. Once the objective, input levers, and the data are set, the final step is to design one or more models whose predictions can be combined to create solutions representing the modeler, simulator, and optimizer. In relation to the above, check one of the related posts. The title is, okay, I'm sorry, this seems to be something that doesn't really apply to the, but I think he's just basically describing kind of a process of steps that you go through on a higher level when looking at how to go about designing a data science solution to whatever it is you're working with. How would you go about deploying a machine learning model in the cloud and serve predictions through APIs? Here are the steps for deploying machine learning models in the cloud. The points below represent a couple of options related to deploying the models in the Amazon cloud. Deployment using the Flask app, deploy the model file in Amazon S3 storage, create a Python Flask-based app that loads the model for serving the predictions. The Python Flask app can be Dockerized and deployed using Amazon Elastic Container service. Expose the Python Flask app through the REST API. The REST API can be exposed using the Amazon Gateway service. And then deployment using Amazon SageMaker. Train the model using Amazon SageMaker Studio. Deploy the model as Lambda service right from within SageMaker. So it just sounds like what's going on here is he's describing some of the machine learning parts of the Amazon cloud service. We have different names for these in Azure. Data science question again. What will be your governance strategy for machine learning based solutions? The governance strategy for machine learning based solutions is about measuring the performance of the models and to take appropriate actions in case the model actually dips below a particular threshold. One can have a system of red, amber, green. Note that the threshold accuracy range mentioned below is hypothetical. It could vary based on your requirements. In case the model accuracy is above 85% or so, you can tag the model as green. Nothing needs to be done here. In the case the model accuracy stays in the range of, say, 70 to 85, the model can be tagged as amber. One should examine the reason for the dip in model accuracy and take the appropriate action, such as retraining the models. In case the model accuracy dips below 70%, one can tag the model as red. In this case, the model should be replaced with the last best model and some alternate rule-based solutions to be deployed, or there should be a provision of exception handling. talk about a cloud-based platform that could be used for training machine learning models by the data science team. So again, he's talking about the two Amazon things here. One can design the data science workbench using the Amazon SageMaker Studio IDE for machine learning models. It is a great tool and provides cost-effective platform for training machine learning models. The best part of it is it can easily be integrated with the data lake S3 on Amazon. There can be other viable options with other cloud platforms such as Azure and Google. What is the CAP theorem? The CAP theorem for distributed computing was published by Eric Brewer. This states that it is not possible for a distributed computer system to simultaneously provide all three of the following guarantees. Consistency. All nodes see the same data even at the same time with concurrent updates. Availability. A guarantee that every request receives a response about whether it was successful or failed. Partition tolerance. The system continues to operate despite arbitrary message loss or failure of part of the system. The CAP acronym corresponds to these three guarantees. This theorem has created the base for modern distributed computing approaches. World's most high volume traffic companies, Amazon, Google, Facebook, use this as basis for deciding their application architecture. It is important to understand that only two of these three conditions can be guaranteed to be met by a system. Does anybody have any comments about the CAP theorem? It seems like it's very general, but kind of seems to apply to the way that people, kind of decide some architecture questions. No comment? Okay. Programming and computing. Explain the difference between asynchronous and parallel programming. When you run something asynchronously, it means it is non-blocking. You execute it without waiting for it to complete and carry on with other things. Parallelism means to run multiple things at the same time in parallel. Parallelism works well when you can separate tasks into independent pieces of work. Async and callbacks are generally a way, tool or mechanism, to express concurrency, i.e. a set of entities possibly talking to each other and sharing resources. Take, for example, rendering frames of 3D animation. To render the animation takes a long time, so if you were to launch that render from within your animation editing software, you would make sure it was running asynchronously so it didn't lock up your UI and you could continue doing other things. Now, each frame of that animation can also be considered as an individual task. If you have a multiple CPU/core or multiple machines available, we can render multiple frames in parallel to speed up the overall workload. Now, what is scalability? Scalability is the ability of a system, network, or process to handle a growing amount of load by adding more resources. The adding of resources can be done in two ways. Scaling up, this involves adding more resources to the existing nodes, for example, adding more RAM, storage, or processing power. And scaling out, this involves adding more nodes to support more users. Any of the approaches can be used for scaling out an application. However, the cost of adding resources per user may change as the volume increases. If we add resources to the system, it should increase the ability of the application to take more load in proportional manner of added resources. An ideal application should be able to serve high level of load and less resources. However, in practical, linearly scalable system may be the best option. Linearly scalable system may be the best option achievable. Poorly designed applications may have really high cost on scaling out since it will require more resources/users as the load increases. So I think he's, kind of overcomplicating the question. These two things really describe it the best. Everybody knows that, if you want better performance, you increase the compute a little bit, or you increase the amount of, VMs that are operating on a specific task. What are the advantages of no SQL over traditional RDBMS? No SQL is better than RDBMS because of the following reasons, properties of NoSQL. It supports semi-structured data and volatile data. It does not have a schema. Read-write throughput is very high. Horizontal scalability can be achieved easily. Will support big data in volumes of terabytes and petabytes. Provides good support for analytic tools on top of big data. Can be hosted in cheaper hardware machines. In-memory caching option is available to increase the performance of queries. Faster development life cycles for developers. And then RDBMS is better than NoSQL for the following reasons. Transactions with ACID properties, atomicity, consistency, isolation, and durability. Adherence to strong schema of data being written/read. Real-time query management in case of data sizes less than 10 terabytes. Execution of complex queries involving join and group by clauses. Now, does anybody have a lot of experience with NoSQL? I don't. I'm just wondering if anybody works with it much. Okay.
Yeah, I don't have a whole lot of experience, but I think I guess Spark would be an example of that, or Databricks.
Yeah, you know, like I kind of like on the surface, like I've seen how to use the tool, but I've never had to put it to practice very much, you know what I mean? So
Right.
I haven't personally had too much contact with working with this kind of stuff here.
Actually, I don't
Although,
think
you know, there's always a first time.
this answer to this question is valid because, for example, for SQL, it says a real time query management for less than 10 terabytes, but modern data warehouses can handle up to and like petabytes. And yeah, and they look at, for example, Firebolt, right? They have just-in-time compilation and they run huge queries very fast, and they're SQL database. So I don't know, many points which here listed as benefits of NoSQL, they also applicable to SQL.
Yeah.
In memory caching, like whatever.
Now, would you say that's because they just expand the ability to do stuff with SQL because it's more useful that way, or just because I'm just curious? Like he has this list of kind of reasons why you would go with NoSQL, and you're saying that as time goes by, we're starting to see these abilities with SQL, correct?
Yes. On the other side, if you look, for example, Facebook, right? The huge data is distributed, and it is NoSQL, right? So I guess it has a point, but it's limited to what it can do. It's mostly just handling like transactional, like separating different data flows, because people in Australia and like people in America probably using different subsystems. Anyway, let's go further because we have.
Okay.
Okay.
So let's go to the next one. What is meant by lower latency interaction? Low latency means that there's very little delay between the time you request something and the time you get a response. As it applies to WebSockets, it just means that data can be sent quicker, particularly over slow links, because the connection has already been established, so no extra packet round trips are required to establish the TCP connection. Efficiency again, what is meant by the system shall be resilient? System is resilient if it stays responsive in the face of failure. This applies not only to highly available mission-critical system. Any system that is not resilient will be unresponsive after a failure. Resilience is achieved by replication, containment, isolation, and delegation. Failures are contained within each component, isolating components from each other, and thereby ensuring that part of the system can fail and recover without compromising the system as a whole. Recovery of each component is delegated to another external component, and high availability is ensured by replication where necessary. The client of a component is not burdened with handling its failures. So that's pretty relevant. I mean, we kind of deal with those different options in Azure all the time. What is elasticity in contrast to scalability? Elasticity means that the throughput of a system scales up or down automatically to meet varying demand as resources are proportionally added or removed. The system needs to be scalable to allow it to benefit from dynamic addition or removal of resources at runtime. Elasticity, therefore, builds upon scalability and expands on it by adding the notion of automatic resource management. And it'd be nice if things were always elastic, and then you'd never have to up the compute manually. But I guess it just costs a lot more, although I'm not particularly sure what the cost difference would be if you had it constantly elastic. What is the difference between monolithic, SOA, and microservice architecture? Monolithic architecture is similar to a big container wherein all the software components of an application are assembled together and tightly packaged. A service-oriented architecture is a collection of services which communicate with each other. The communication can involve either simple data passing, or it could involve two or more services coordinating some activity. And a microservice architecture is an architectural style that structures an application as a collection of small autonomous services modeled around a business domain. So this kind of makes me think of Kubernetes.
Hold on. Frankly, I don't understand the difference between service-oriented and microservice. This is basically the same thing. Maybe a microservice is using something like Istio, where is a directory of services. So you just have many different microservices. Whereas service-oriented, maybe just having just few.
Well, let's see what IBM says.
Okay, so what's the difference? Okay, what's the
This one is
service-oriented?
so this is, seems like,
yeah, that's fine, but go down. Where is the difference? What are microservices, blah, blah, blah. Go down.
yeah, we know what those are.
The
The
main
main
difference
difference, it
is
seems like a
scope.
scope.
To put it simply, service-oriented has an enterprise scope, and the microservices has an application scope. Oh, okay. This is a good image.
This image?
Yeah. Because it says, okay, the one application consists of multiple services. Okay. Okay, so that's fine. Let's return to questions because we
Okay.
have limited
Did that
time.
make any like obvious sense about what might be some of the differences? Seems like they had, I could put a link to that to you. Okay, we're going to a new section here. And now we're going to, this is going to be architecting a data model. This section will be primarily about data modeling. What modeling tools, this is going back to a different format of asking questions. This is more like interview oriented. What modeling tool have you used in your work so far? Which do you consider efficient or powerful? So how would you answer that? Even if data modeling isn't one of your main responsibilities, your role as a data architect requires you to have an in-depth understanding of data modeling. If you lack the experience, demonstrate that you are well informed on the topic and mention the data modeling tools you find most useful. The interviewer will value that you're at least familiar with the subject. So an example answer is, I've mainly used both Oracle SQL Developer Data Modeler and Power Designer. I can say that the Oracle Data Modeler has been more than sufficient for my needs with its dimensional modeling and integrated source code control that supports collaborative development. However, the Power Designer also boasts some wonderful technology-centric metadata management capabilities for data architects and business-centric techniques for non-technical coworkers. Overall, I think both tools are worth the try, depending on the company's needs. So I guess,
can you add here a section for Microsoft? What would be the tools for Microsoft?
For data modeling?
Yeah. Tyler, what do you say?
Yeah, that's one Microsoft really has never
Yeah,
put
they
a whole lot of
don't.
time and investment behind creating a modeling tool. So in Management Studio, you can
It's a
generate
very
database
basic thing
diagrams.
that you can do in there.
Yeah, so generally, yeah, you're left to using third-party tools, even for modeling SQL Server databases.
So what do you use?
Generally, what I use most recently, it's fairly inexpensive, but it gets the job done, is a tool called SQLDBM.
Yeah, that's yeah, I was about to say that.
Oh, okay. Yeah,
Yeah.
that's out. It's a web-based tool, but it has some abilities to be able to reverse engineer diagrams from an existing database, as well as forward engineering. Once you create your model, you can choose your target database engine, and it will script out all your tables for you with the necessary relationships and whatnot.
Mhm.
Yeah. Misha, can you make a note here, like below the answer? So for Micah, oops, what's going on? Yeah, here.
Yeah, so for Microsoft, there isn't really a good
Yeah, but
tool.
just write what Tyler said. For Microsoft, and also Tyler, have you ever used Irwin?
I have not used Irwin. I have used ER Studio, and I think I know those are two pretty big names in the database modeling area, kind of the enterprise grade modeling tools.
Don't use the word redapt.
Oh.
That I have used. We can use. Okay, fine. Okay, let's go next question.
Okay. In your role as a data architect, what metrics have you created or used to measure the quality of new and existing data? How to answer. Having established processes to ensure the quality of data is key to ensure the quality of data is key to the company's data infrastructure. With this question, the hiring manager wants to assess your relevant experience. Make sure you highlight the particular dimension you've monitored to validate the data quality. So an example answer would be, I've always been involved in ensuring data quality in my job as a data architect. My team and I monitored some specific dimensions to validate the quality of the data. These included completeness, uniqueness, timeliness, validity, accuracy, and consistency. Monitoring these dimensions helped us detect inconsistencies that could negatively affect the accuracy of data analysis. What is a junk dimension? A junk dimension is a dimension table consisting of attributes that do not belong to the fact table or in any of the existing dimension tables. The nature of these attributes is usually text or various flags. Non-generic comments are just simple yes, no, or true, false indicators. What are integrity constraints? What are the different types of integrity constraints? Integrity constraints are a set of rules. It is used to maintain the quality of information. Integrity constraints ensure that the data insertion, updating, and other processes have to be performed in such a way that data integrity is not affected. The following are examples of constraints: null, unique key, primary key, foreign key.
Okay, when you say null, what does it mean?
Well,
That
my
no
guess
nulls?
would be it's kind of like a definition of no value
No.
in that specific space, as opposed to saying it is zero, which is a value, or blank. Like there's a difference between null and empty string, for example.
No, I'm not asking you definition of the word null. I'm asking, so when you say constraint, so you say this key is a primary key or a foreign key or unique key. I understand this is a constraint. But when you say null, so you say null about some column, what does it mean?
I think it's
Probably
nullability.
Nullability. Okay, this is better.
Can this be null or not?
Yeah.
Oh, that's right. It was incorrectly stated, yeah. Nullability, whether or not this kind of value is allowed, null value.
Okay,
Yep.
Misha,
Thank you
we're
for
out
clarifying.